All right, folks, I think we are all set. And I just need to record. Very good. All right, good afternoon, and thank you for joining our briefing on the City of Philadelphia's response to rising gun violence. This is for press only. If you are not a member of the press, please log out and you can watch today's live stream on the City of Philadelphia's Facebook page. We will begin our briefing with opening remarks today from Mayor Kenney. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you all for being here. Today we'll start with an overview of our summer programming for children and youth. Last summer, like all of 2020, was challenging. This year will be different. Summer 2021 will be exciting and enriching, full of opportunities for learning and fun for youth of all ages. We have our school district partnership for summer academic and enrichment camps, play streets, parks and rec summer camps, city out of school time summer camps in the community, as well as summer work ready for older youth. We know that these types of activities are lifelines for our kids, and we believe that keeping children and youth engaged in dynamic summer experiences will help keep them safe and reduce community violence. I'd like to turn it now over to Deputy Mayor Cynthia Figueroa to tell us more about the summer of 2021.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I'm really excited to join today to highlight what is going to be such an extraordinary and different summer. And certainly, as the mayor highlighted, there was a lot that happened in 2020 that didn't give us the opportunity to really provide the kind of activities that should be available for kids. So I know nobody wants to go back in time, but 2020 was a rough period at the height of our pandemic. We had to make the difficult decision that we had no pools, we had limited spray grounds, there was no in-person library services. All of our camps were virtual, except for a very small number of Parks and Rec camps that ran. So we only could reach 2,000 kids in person. And while we made the commitment and maintained our summer work ready program for over 6,000 kids, it was all virtual. So super excited that next year or this summer, just a few months away, is going to be a huge difference. Good news. A lot is going to be offered. I'm going to go over through some of that. We've really prioritized in person, and we know having kids engaged and active in safe and enriching opportunities is really critical. We've heard a lot about pools. We're super excited that we will be having pools available again this year. And I'm going to walk through now very specifically some of the other targeted programs that the mayor highlighted. But first, I want to say that we're working and we have available, it went up this week. We have a digital hub that all the summer programs and our activities are available. It's phila.gov, Play It Safe, PHL. We're updating that information on a regular basis. We're also working to add a map locator like we did for our food access. So you have all the sites, what's happening, hours, and availability. So what are we doing? I remember that number, 2,000, and now we're in a very different place. So our out of school time work that we will be doing with the School District of Philadelphia, as well as with our community-based partners, we're targeting 6,996 kids. So we're close to 7,000 kids in that area. For work ready, we're targeting 9th to 12th graders, and we have 8,000 slots. I'm super excited to share that as of this week, we have over 5,000 kids that have registered and have submitted their application for a work exposure opportunity. I believe the police commissioner will say that, but we're so thrilled that a lot of our summer programming has been in direct partnership with planning with our police department around the safety needs of kids and all of these different activities. But we're so grateful for the Police Athletic League's work, and we're looking to partner with them in terms of targeting a number of slots. Parks and Rec Summer Camp, last year, remember I said 2,000, we're targeting 4,000 to 5,000 kids. And we will have play streets again this summer, which are critical not just for activities right outside of your doorstep for kids, but it's also a tremendous partnership in the community, and it's a meal accessibility for kids. So having meals available at your very own doorstep. Last year, we had around 350, and it's our target to get to that same number, that there'd be 350 play streets throughout the city of Philadelphia. I'll go on to the next slide. Some of the other things that I know I certainly took part in is I'm excited that our parks are available. We have one of the most amazing park systems in the country, and we saw a huge increase. So obviously, we're very committed to making sure that folks are safe and enjoying our public parks and public spaces, and of course, our pools. We will be working in close guidance with the health department, but we're very excited, and we will continue to do our opportunities through the free library. We'll have virtual and in person, which will be kindergarten through 12th grade. We also have this tremendous opportunity to infuse literacy work into our Parks and Rec camps through support from the free library. I go to the next slide. The library itself is also going to continue to run some virtual programming for targeted age groups, and we're happy to have that available for those who might be more cautious about returning to in-person. And again, even though this is a tremendous amount of information that we're providing to you, it's all going to be available at our one-stop digital site. So I'll go to the next slide. This is a work in progress. This is a map that indicates programming by type of service. Again, we're trying to target particularly high-need areas and working to look at where there are gaps in services. And we're looking to finalize any additional sites that we're working with the school district to make sure that as many programs who are interested in working at school district sites have the opportunity to submit an application. Lastly, I mentioned that we're going to be working with the Police Athletic League, and I think it's very important to just highlight that the tremendous partnership with the police department, and that we'll be working with them to have extended hours, and we're working to add them into our school district sites when possible. Next slide. So what can you do right now? If you are interested or know folks who'd be interested and you feel like your community could benefit from becoming a Play Street, you can register to become a Play Street supervisor. If you haven't done so already, you can register your student for the school district programs. The enrollment process for the 6,000 slots at the school district is through the school district's website. You can also enroll for a Parks and Rec camp. You can get a summer job. We're still looking for lifeguards. It's a great job, great pay. You can apply for those through Work Ready. And you can learn about all of this, again, through phila.gov /play it safe. And I just want to highlight that we'll talk about it, but there's a lot that we've been doing also to make sure that we're targeting our supports and our work for older youth, both through the Work Ready. Our Office of Youth Engagement also has some tremendous opportunities, and we're pleased to be partnering and being supported by the work in the Managing Director's Office, the Police Department, as well as the Office of Violence Prevention. So I know once we get through the whole list, I'm happy to answer any questions, but May and June will continue to move us through the planning process to have as many of those slots filled as possible. Super excited that we're going to have a very enriching summer and having kids engaged in a multitude of ways where we weren't able to do so last year. So thanks again.
Thank you, Cynthia. And could you repeat the URL? Because I think you truncated it when you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's phila.gov /PlayItSafePHL.
Perfect. Thank you. And next, we have Erica Atwood, who is Senior Director for the Office of Policy and Strategic Initiatives for Criminal Justice and Public Safety. Erica?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Mike. And so today, making a brief announcement about additional investments we're making in the criminal justice and reentry sector. We have 2 microgrant programs that we've awarded today and in the last couple weeks. The Office of Criminal Justice awarded 20 microgrants to community organizations that support criminal justice reform efforts of the Kinney administration. These grants of up to $10,000 are designed to advance racial equity in the criminal justice system and safely reduce the local jail population. The Criminal Justice Micro Grant Fund, it will be administered by the Mayor's Fund for Philadelphia, and resources for this effort were provided by the MacArthur Foundation Safety and Justice Challenge. The Criminal Justice Micro Grant Fund is supporting organizations that advance criminal justice reform from a policy perspective, directly engage Philadelphia's communities disproportionately impacted by the criminal justice system in the reform work, and provide support services to individuals impacted by the system as a whole. These grants support the continuation of existing justice reform efforts and new projects and innovative approaches to criminal justice reform. 20 community organizations received a combined total amount of $200,000 in funding, with individual grants ranging from a little under $5,000 to $10,000. Funded programs include both new and existing efforts ranging from career skill building, mentorship, and help for returning citizens connecting to their communities. Funding also directly supports workshops and safe spaces for young people who are at risk of entering the criminal justice system. The grant process opened in September of 2020 with a letter of intent and closed in November of 2020. Organizations were then invited to submit a full proposal by February 21st of this year. In our grant selection process, we worked closely with our community advisory committee, and they were able to narrow down the 42 applications to the 20 that were chosen. These grants will be more than a one-time investment. Selected organizations will be a part of a collective network coming together to bring about real and sustained change in our criminal justice system here in Philadelphia. And throughout the year, the Office of Criminal Justice will provide networking opportunities, capacity building, training sessions, and engagement opportunities through the safety and justice reform efforts. And now the Reentry Solutions Microgrant for Community Engagement. This was a total of $60,000 in funding for Reentry Solutions. These grants bring together grassroots organizations and city government to better address the challenges faced by returning citizens. These grants will also serve those who are on supervision, both county probation and parole supervision. Their proposals that they will be implementing with this funding include both virtual and in-person engagement. They'll be hiring peer specialists to engage particularly women who are recently released from jail or on probation. There will be street outreach. There will be expungement clinics, kind of asset surveys, and town halls. We will also be leading therapeutic art programs through support groups, and holding focus groups, and all through this also providing PPE. These grantees were selected through a process that gave preferential treatment to organizations led by people who are directly impacted by the criminal justice system. And grantees were encouraged to hire directly impacted individuals to implement their proposals. And a majority of the participants will receive gift cards for their time and participation in our surveys and our focus groups. The list of grantees for both programs are available in our press release and our Facebook page, Philly Alive 215. And just a reminder that this is an additional grant program that separate and apart from our targeted community investment grants, which we announced in our last press briefing, which was $400,000 funding given to approximately 30 organizations. With that, at the end, again, happy to answer any questions you have about our granting program and our investments in community. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Now we're going to turn things over to Police Commissioner Danielle Alba.
Thank you, Ms. Atwood. Good afternoon. As an agency entrusted to provide safety to the residents and visitors of Philadelphia, ensuring that the areas that our children play at are safe is central to our concerns. I'm thankful for the continued interagency efforts that have been underway. The PPD's role is to provide safety in and around our recreation and PAL centers. We want to make sure that our youth use these areas as safe havens because in many cases, places like these are the only safe places that they have. As we have in prior years, our department will provide a full complement of officers to patrol and monitor our rec centers during hours of operation. These measures will include both stationary and roving beats with officers both on foot and on bicycles. Select PAL centers will also be extending their hours starting on June 17th at 10 locations throughout the city. These extended hours will take place on Thursday nights and on Saturdays. During these extended hours, PAL will be hosting programming for our youth. The extended hours are on Thursdays from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. and on Saturdays from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. PAL officers will also be in frequent communication with district community relations officers to ensure that they are kept informed on the various events occurring in the district. PAL officers will be able to engage with community members during these events and give residents information on their PAL centers and activities offered through their centers that can help keep their kids engaged over the summer. There will also be a youth summit component that will occur once during the 10 weeks at these select PAL locations. I hope that the community will reach out to their local PAL centers and take advantage of the many services that we offer. For more information about the Philadelphia Police Athletic League, please visit phillypal.org or call 215-291-9000. Before I turn the presentation over to Deputy Commissioner Dales, in the spirit of community engagement and inclusion, I want to announce that the PPD recruiting unit is once again opening the application period for the position of police officer recruit. The application period will open this Saturday on May 1st, 2021, and will close on May 31st, 2021. Please note that effective September 2020, all applicants must have been a resident of the city for at least 1 year prior to appointment. As we seek to recruit, retain, and develop an exceptional team of personnel and promote our 30 by 30 pledge, we encourage anyone interested to apply. If you or anyone else know of any prospective applicants, please forward this information to them. For additional information, please call 215-683-COPS or 2677-683-2677 or visit our recruitment website, www.joinphillypd.com. While I've stressed the importance of interagency efforts, it is equally important that each agency be appropriately staffed to increase its effectiveness. We are in the midst of a movement, and I encourage those who want to see change in their police departments to be the change. Join our ranks and be a change agent in our department and within your community. Keeping all of our citizens safe is the core responsibility of our department. To that end, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Joel Dales, Deputy Commissioner of Operations, who will provide an update on the latest statistics and trends in our city. Commissioner Dales.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner, give me 1 second to get this started.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes, next slide, please. All right. So I will start with the citywide homicide and shooting victim stats. Looking at the top of the chart, year to date as of April 25th of this year, Philadelphia had 626 shootings, and out of the 626, 159 were homicides. In comparison to last year, homicides are up 33%, 159 this year versus 120 last year. And shootings are up 37%, 626 this year versus 456 last year. Out of the 159 homicides, 38 occurred inside of a residential building. It's not listed on the chart, but 6 of the homicides occurred inside of a commercial building, which brings the total of homicides that occurred inside to 44. Looking at the bottom left of the chart, it shows the motives for the homicide. The top 3 motives are number 1, argument, number 2, drugs, and number 3, domestic, which is currently up by 100% in comparison to last year. Next slide, please. All right, this slide shows the citywide homicide and shooting victim stats weekly comparison. So if you look at the far right of the chart, it shows from 419 to 425, we had 10 homicides, 35 shooting victims, which include homicides, and 35 shooting occurrences. Shooting occurrences is an incident count where an individual or individuals were shot, which we basically are counting the incidents, not the number of victims in this particular category. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide shows the comparison between citywide homicides and homicides that occurred in the pinpoint grids. Operation Pinpoint is basically our overall crime fighting and information strategy, information sharing strategy that is in alignment with the Roadmap for Safer Communities. Operation Pinpoint is basically a combination of several policing models such as hotspot policing, offender-focused policing, intelligent-led policing, and community-oriented policing. We have over 45 pinpoint grids throughout the city that were identified and established based on data and intelligence that showed high levels of violent crimes within these grids. If you look at the top of the chart, it shows citywide homicides up 33%. However, looking at the bottom of the chart, it shows pinpoint grids down 12%. Next slide, please. This slide shows the comparison between citywide shooting victims and shooting victims in the pinpoint grids. Citywide shooting victims are up 37%, and the pinpoint grids are at 0. So if you look at the numbers are the same exact numbers as last year during this time in the pinpoint grids. Next slide, please. This slide shows the year-end total VOOF arrests for 2017 through 2020. It also shows the total VOOF arrests year-to-date for 2021 from January 1st to April 26th. VUFA is basically an acronym for Violation of Uniforms Firearms Act. So when I mention VUFA arrest, it basically means the person was arrested for illegally possessing a firearm. If you look at the bar from the right, the second bar from the right, in 2020, we reached an all-time high for VOOF arrests that totaled 2,324. And so far this year, we have 1,044 VOOF arrests. And I would like to point out that this time last year, we had 531 VOOF arrests, which is a 97% increase in comparison to last year. Next slide, please. As of 4/26 of this year, 1,982 crime guns were recovered in our city. And out of that number, 183 were privately made firearms, which is also known as ghost guns. A crime gun is any gun recovered by the police as part of a criminal investigation. And I want to also mention that the number does not include guns from buybacks or turn-ins. Next slide. And lastly, in reference to the ATV and dirt bike initiative, from 3/20 to 4/23 of this year, we confiscated 193 vehicles. 104 of the confiscations were from the ATV dirt bike initiative, and 90 were from other, which when I say other, meaning it was outside of the ATV dirt bike detail. So we are confiscating vehicles when we're not running the ATV detail. So with that, I will now turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Ben Nash, who is the Deputy Commissioner of Investigations, who will speak about cases we wish to highlight.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Dales. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to highlight some recent investigations that were successfully conducted by the members of our homicide unit with great assistance from our patrol officers. The wanted posters on the board reference individuals wanted for the homicide I'm about to discuss. But I'm going to first give some background. And I want to start by talking about an individual that was highlighted on our initial press conference back on March the 17th of this year. It was someone who was wanted for murder. During that update, profiled Mr. Amin Hirsch, that he was wanted for a Christmas Eve murder in West Philadelphia and was also a person believed to be involved in additional violent crimes. Fortunately, shortly after that press conference, Mr. Hirsch was arrested just a few days later on March 20th. He was charged with a Christmas Eve shooting homicide from 1800 Wynwood Road in West Philadelphia. Since that arrest, a little more than a month ago, our homicide investigators, along with the members of our Southwest Task Force, have used video and social media to link Mr. Hirsch to additional violent crimes, including the quadruple shooting in West Philadelphia that occurred in the parking lot area behind 1411 North 76th Street on March 11th of this year. During this 3 o'clock in the afternoon shooting in West Philadelphia, a total of 4 people were shot while sitting inside of a parked vehicle. Mr. Hurst has now been charged with murder in that double homicide from March 11th. And I'm sorry, these are not the individuals. The individuals on the screen are for one that I'll be talking about in a second. Still talking about Mr. Hurst. Perhaps most disturbingly, in a case that received significant attention because of where it occurred, Mr. Hurst has been charged with murder today for the early morning shooting homicide of 20-year-old Rodney Hargrove, who just moments earlier had been released from the Kern-Fromhold Correction Facility in our prison complex. Just before 2 a.m. and it occurred just before 2 a.m. on Thursday, March 18th. Mr. Hargrove was shot multiple times while waiting for transportation home from the grounds of the jail facility at 8101 State Road. At this time, it appears that Mr. Hargrove, who was killed in that incident, was a tragic victim of mistaken identity. The next update does include the individuals that are wanted for the homicide I'm about to discuss. And that's unfortunately a tragic murder of 2 teenagers who were friends and were shot and killed in the same North Philadelphia neighborhood, just 8 days apart during this month of April. On April the 6th, 15-year-old Namir Johnson was shot and killed on the 2500 block of West Somerset Street. Only blocks away and 8 days later, 16-year-old Kadeem Green was shot and killed on the 2900 block of North Taney Street in North Philadelphia. Recovered video surveillance footage was critical during this investigation. After viewing video footage and additional data that was retrieved from the area during the first shooting on April 6th, homicide investigators coordinated with patrol officers from the 39th District, and those officers were able to supply critical information regarding suspects identified to be involved in that murder. Because of the excellent work by the officers from the 39th District, a PMF, or a privately made firearm, what Deputy Dales referred to as a ghost gun, was recovered from a suspect, and that firearm was definitively matched to ballistic evidence that had been recovered from both of the murder scenes on Somerset and on Taney Streets. As a result of the outstanding work completed by our homicide investigators, arrest warrants for 20-year-old Quadir Daly and 21-year-old Samir Hawkins, and those are the 2 wanted that we had on the screen. Both of those warrants have been obtained this week, and now both of those suspects are fugitive for the April 6th murder of 15-year-old Namir Johnson. If anyone has any information regarding the whereabouts of either of these suspects, they are urged to call our tip line at 215-686-TIPS or call 911. Investigators are continuing to work hard to obtain the necessary evidence to obtain an arrest warrant for the April 14th murder of 16-year-old Kadeem Green on the 2900 block of Taney Street. That is believed to be connected to the earlier murder on Somerset Street. It's believed by our investigators that both of these victims were friends and they may have been targeted by the offenders. And that's it for the wanted. Now I'm going to finish up with an update involving the brazen shooting that happened inside of the Philadelphia Mills Mall on March 29th at approximately 5 p.m. In front of horrified shoppers, 21-year-old Dominic Billa Lewis was shot in the chest and subsequently pronounced dead at the scene inside of the Philadelphia Mills Mall. With significant aid of extensive video surveillance that was recovered from inside the mall, as well as from additional cameras in the area, investigators quickly zeroed in on a suspect as they worked diligently to support a murder charge against the suspect. Just yesterday, we obtained an arrest warrant for the shooter, identified as Gregory Smith. And in the early mornings of just today, Mr. Smith was arrested and is presently being processed for this violent crime. As I've noted many times in the past, video surveillance footage that's recovered at or near the scene of a violent incident is critical in assisting our dedicated investigators to identify suspects and establish the necessary evidence that will lead to approved murder charges against the offenders. I continue to urge everyone in the city to enhance our safety by investing in video surveillance equipment for their business and especially for their private residences. I want to remind everyone again that all tips to help us identify and locate dangerous criminals can be called in to our tip line at 215-686-TIPS, which is 215-686-8477. Or as always, they can call 911. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Mike Dunn.
Thank you, Commissioner. And with that, we are going to move now to Q&A for members of the media. In addition to Mayor Kenny and the speakers that we just heard, we are also joined today by Managing Director Tumar Alexander and First Deputy Managing Director Vanessa Garrett Harley. Because of limited time, only one representative from each outlet is permitted to ask questions in the first round. To limit their questions to 3 or fewer. And if there is time for a second round, we will open it up to other topics. With that, let's go first to Purple Blackwell of PQ Radio.
Greetings. Happy Wednesday, everyone. So my first question is in regards to what type of collaboration is going on with PPD, with the PA Housing Agency policing, and also like the University Police. Are you guys trying to involve them in regards to, patrolling or helping to prevent gun violence? And then my second question would be in regards to, I have a community person, her name is Miss Karen Chavalaro, and she recently lost her son to gun violence. And she said that she was supposed to be, or was told that she can receive victim services for her son to cover the memorial services. But because she was a responsible adult and already had insurance, she was denied. Can anyone answer those questions?
Mr. Outlaw first.
Sure. So we meet with the Philadelphia Housing Authority and also the University Police Departments on a weekly basis. Commissioner Dales, I can turn it over to him, leads or facilitates what we call a weekly shooting review. In that meeting every Tuesday morning, we share not only data around what's going on in specific districts, but we also pretty much discuss every shooting that's happened in the previous week. We know that there's overlap between what happens in our districts with PHA properties and also on university campuses. So it's important to not only share the information so they have situational awareness, but also to ensure that if there's any resource needs or if there's anything that can be done vice versa in collaboration, that that information is shared. And then, like I said, any action items or deliverables that needs to be assigned to any particular agency is done before that meeting convenes. Commissioner Dales, do you want to add anything to that?
The only thing I want to add is that I will say that the Housing Authority Police Department, they're also going to assist us with covering the rec centers. Those rec centers that are adjacent to their jurisdiction, the areas that they cover, the developments that they cover. So they are going to assist in reference to the rec center coverage. And the police commissioner pretty much covered everything else in reference to how we work in true partnership with our other outside agencies.
Thank you.
I'll jump in on the question on the victim's assistance. I may not be able to answer the question directly. If you can get me a contact number in the chat or through Mike Dunn, I'll make sure that the victim's assistance officer gets back and we'll try to clarify any issues that may have come up regarding that tragic murder.
Thank you.
Purple, are you all set for the moment?
I am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's go now to Charlene Santiago of Univision. And Charlene, we do have Armando available.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Aquí estoy haciendo una pregunta que me compartieron y es la siguiente. ¿Cuál es la capacitación que tienen los funcionarios, la policía, para actuar en casos en que las personas violentas causan caos dentro de algunos negocios y los propietarios sienten que la policía no sabe cómo resolver estos conflictos? Esto esta pregunta con un enfoque en las bodegas de la ciudad.
This is a question that's being sent to me that I would like to share with you. And this has to do with what is the city doing in terms of training for officers, police officers that are responding to violent events with people that turn violent inside shops and stores, specifically bodegas. And bodega owners feel that sometimes the police don't know how to respond to these crises. Tumar, maybe?
Or someone from the police department.
I'm sorry, Armando. I was going to pass that on to Commissioner Outlaw. And I know, Commissioner, we also have Rachel Eisenberger on if you want to talk more about the co-responder model, but I'll pass that on to you.
Yeah, I mean, if we're, just so I'm clear on the question, if we're talking about active shooter type of incidences or anything that are happening in open spaces, I mean, depending on the type of incident, we train, depending on the unit that responds, whether it's at the train, whether in the academy or on an annual basis in service. We utilize something called reality-based training, which is scenario-based training, which is where we introduce stress and use real life case studies or scenarios based off of things that have happened here in the city or in other parts of the country via lessons learned. And we utilize, again, the scenarios and real life situations so that if there are any mistakes made, we make them there in practice. And then we, again, train together generally with our squads or our units and supervisors so that, again, we are training with those folks that we work with generally on a regular basis. Active shooter type scenarios are different. That's a specialized type of training, also a certain level of training in which we engage. But again, this is all part of the types of training that we receive on a regular basis, knowing that this is something that we can encounter on at any given time.
I think part of the question I think of...
You know what, Mayor, I'm sorry, I wanted to let Armando translate the commissioner. And then
okay, I'm sorry.
Off for 1 second.
La respuesta tiene que ver con los tipos de capacitación que tenemos constantemente para nuestro departamento de policía y nuestros oficiales en la ciudad. Tenemos tipos de capacitación que se aplican a diferentes tipos de situaciones. El caso de tiradores en acción requiere una capacitación especializada y forma parte del tipo de capacitación que damos en general, que es una capacitación que se basa en la realidad. Y esto toma en cuenta escenarios y situaciones que han sucedido, la atención que tienen los participantes en ese momento, y estos escenarios también nos permiten incorporar las lecciones que hemos aprendido de los hechos previos. Tenemos situaciones de la vida real y nos permite eso elaborar respuestas a errores en las respuestas previas. Esto nosotros lo damos a las patrullas, también a los supervisores, y esta es una capacitación constante que tenemos. Como digo, son 2 niveles de capacitación, una para situaciones que no involucran a un tirador en acción y otras que sí. Y el alcalde nos va a agregar un poco más. Go ahead, Mayor.
I think maybe part of the question, as I understood it, was that how do we respond to a bodega situation, which may be a tight and closed place where someone's having a mental breakdown and is starting, as we see on video a lot, people, tearing up the place, throwing around the products, knocking the stuff off the shelves. I mean, I think this is more like also a co-responder type of situation that maybe Rachel could elaborate on.
Rachel, before you answer, could you give your full name and title for those who aren't here?
Sure. Hello, Rachel Eisenberg. I'm the director of the Office of Criminal Justice within the Managing Director's Office. And I just would like to add thank you to what the mayor and Commissioner Outlaw said. The city is working in close collaboration with the police department and the Department of Behavioral Health to implement a pilot initiative called, commonly known as a co-responder program that, pairs CIT or crisis intervention trained police officers with Hello?
Well, that was my fault. Go ahead. I meant to mute myself and I muted you. So
okay. Was I muted the whole time or?
No. It's just
okay. So pair CIT trained officers with behavioral health clinicians to respond to Philadelphians in crisis and to, really de-escalate situations and refer people to services in the community to meet behavioral health needs. And so these teams are really specialized to help intervene in situations where someone is experiencing a behavioral health crisis, where their greatest need is for either increased supports in the community and that, a tailored response would actually help de-escalate the situation. And so we are currently working, this model has been implemented across the country and is something that we're doing in Philadelphia currently.
And Armando,
El alcalde nos dice de que estos incidentes probablemente tengan relación con los clientes que pierden la paciencia, pierden el control, específicamente en las bodegas, y cuando tienen una crisis de salud mental empiezan a destruir todos los productos y hacer realmente un escándalo en estas tiendas. Y nos agrega Rachel, de parte de la oficina de la fiscalía, de la ciudad, de que está trabajándose en conjunto con los departamentos de policía y sus oficiales y con la unidad de salud conductual y salud mental de la ciudad para poder tener un programa piloto, que es un programa de correspondientes, y este programa pone juntamente a los oficiales de policía con los oficiales que han recibido capacitación en crisis de salud mental. Esto con la intención de desescalar o reducir la tensión que pueda darse en estos problemas y para referir a estas personas a los servicios de salud mental que están disponibles en la ciudad. También nos agrega de que esto obviamente se hace para tratar de reducir estas conductas, para tratar de conectar a la gente con los servicios de salud mental y el apoyo necesario que se encuentra disponible en la ciudad, y que este es un programa y un acercamiento que se está implementando en otras partes del país y que ahora se está implementando también en Filadelfia. Gracias.
Thank you, Armando. Charlene, did you have any follow-ups on that?
No, that's it on my part. Thank you, everybody.
Very good. Thank you. And let's go now to Layla Jones of Billy Penn.
Hi, hello. My question is for Deputy Commissioner Benjamin Naish about the individual you said was highlighted in the initial presser. Could you repeat his name? And also, is there any evidence that this presser is what helped lead to that individual's arrest?
So I'm Benjamin Nash. Thanks. Thank you, Layla, for the question. The individual I was speaking about that was originally discussed on the 17th is a individual. He's 16 years old. His name is Amin Hurst, H-U-R-S-T. I can tell you that just 3 days after the original press conference, we obtained information on the individual's whereabouts. I can't tell you specifically whether it was as a result of the press conference or not, but it was right after that. We were able to take him into custody on March the 20th, and he's remained in custody since that time. And since that time, we were able to develop enough probable cause to obtain an arrest warrant for the homicide that had occurred back in March out in West Philadelphia, as well as the original one that he was wanted for back on Christmas Eve. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, and had you all been looking for him since that Christmas Eve murder?
We had.
Okay.
Yes, as we do. Anytime an individual is identified, anytime we get an arrest warrant for somebody for murder, we have a special squad of homicide investigators called our Fugitive Squad. They work very closely with the United States Marshals in trying to track down anyone that's wanted for murder, as that is the highest profile crime we could have. So we've been searching for him. We have information. We developed information that indicates he knew he was being searched. He was being trying to be tracked down. He was actively moving from place to place, but we received some good information just days after that initial press conference that was instrumental in apprehending the individual. Thanks.
Layla, did you have anything further?
That's all. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you. Let's go next to Brian Mendoza of Telemundo.
Hello, everyone. Hola. Buenas tardes, Armando. Sé que la comisionada Outlaw mencionó acerca que estarán patrullando las calles, especialmente las áreas donde hay estos centros de recreación para la juventud, pero ¿por qué va a ser más importante que nunca ahora patrullar estas áreas, siendo que los jóvenes están cayendo víctimas de la violencia armada durante estos últimos meses?
The question is for Commissioner Outlaw. We know that you let us know that there will be patrolling the streets by the police, especially near the recreational centers for the youth of the city. Why will it be more important than ever to do this now, given the loss of life by this youth around the recreational centers?
Well, I think, just with the increased numbers of violence in which our victims have been under the age of 18, and quite frankly, some of our offenders have been juveniles as well, with the summer months coming upon us. In fact, the nicer weather is already here. It's more important than ever, not only for there to be programming for them, but we also need to ensure that the venues that we've set up for them as a city is safe. And so it's one thing to have a safe space for our young folks, but we also know that there are still somewhat determined hotspots. So we might have a safe haven or a PAL center or a rec center in a neighborhood that's still in an operation pinpoint area or a grid. So we want to make sure that we have an increased visibility or presence there, again, whether stationary or roving. So that's why.
Thank you. La respuesta que nos da Brian, la comisionada Outlaw, ella piensa de que los números elevados de violencia en la ciudad indican otra cosa que también es muy triste, que es muchas de estas víctimas están por debajo de los 18 años de edad y de hecho también muchos de los ofensores son juveniles. Con el incremento de la temperatura y los meses del verano, es importante que se tenga una respuesta completa por parte de la ciudad, que no solamente incluye programación para la gente joven, sino lugares seguros dentro de la ciudad donde poder tener a esta gente joven. Estos espacios seguros pueden representar un tipo de seguridad en cada barrio, pero nosotros también sabemos que hay hotspots o puntos calientes, lugares donde se pueden dar problemas y por eso nosotros queremos tener la presencia visible de los oficiales de policía, ya sea estacionados ahí o dando rondas para patrullar las áreas, para darle un sentido de seguridad a estos centros de recreación, a la gente joven y que vean visible la presencia de sus oficiales de policía para proteger a los jóvenes de esta ciudad. Gracias.
Brian, I know Deputy Mayor, Cynthia Figueroa wanted to add some points on that.
Y también quiere decir que da confidencia a las familias para mandar los estudiantes o los niños a jugar en los centros. Y también, como estaba hablando antes, que van a tener policía que también va a hacer actividades con los niños ahí en las áreas para que pueda conectar más. No solamente están ahí para ser policía, pero conectar con la comunidad y trabajar juntos, pero más de nada dar un poquito de confidencia que si tú mandas tu niño a jugar en un lugar, va a estar seguro en ese lugar.
Cynthia, could you provide that for those of us who are not?
Sure. I was just letting Brian know that in addition to all the great pieces that the commissioner shared is that it's really about giving families and the community confidence that you can send your child to a recreational facility and have the confidence that they are going to be safe in their activities. And then in addition to that, as was mentioned earlier, the police and their involvement in the Police Athletic League, but also in other activities at the rec centers creates an opportunity for the police to interact with the community that is not just about policing, but about creating a community feeling between the police at the rec centers.
Thank you, Cynthia. Brian, did you have anything further?
No, thank you so much.
Very good. We have one question in the chat from Anna Orso of the Philadelphia Inquirer. This is for Deputy Commissioner Nash. Deputy Anna asks if you could repeat the information about the development in the case of the man who was fatally shot coming out of the Curran-Fromhold Correctional Facility. Was that suspect apprehended or does the suspect remain at large?
Yeah, I'm sorry if there's any confusion. And let me get the time, let me make sure that I clarify the time. When we held the press conference on the 17th of March, we had the individual, Mr. Hurst, as a person of interest for the shooting that had just occurred 6 days prior on the previous Thursday for that quadruple shooting in West Philadelphia. Commissioner, myself, we were out there. There were 4 individuals shot in a vehicle. And that was, and he had been wanted from a shooting that occurred in late December, and we had an arrest warrant for him. When we arrested him 3 days after the press conference on the 20th of March, We didn't know at that time about his involvement in the tragic shooting at the CFC, the grounds of the prison complex. But as a result of ballistic, a recovery of a weapon and other investigative outstanding work that was done, we started to recognize that just days before he was arrested on the 20th of March, that in fact, he was the individual that was at least one of the people responsible for that shooting. We developed enough information that I'm just not able to get into at this time because he has court proceedings. But I can tell you that the information we developed in the intervening time, since we arrested him on March 20th, was sufficient for review by the homicide supervisor at the district attorney's office to approve the charge for murder for Mr. Hurst for that terrible 2:00 in the morning shooting of Mr. Hargrove right after he'd been released from the CFCA. So I understand it can be a little bit confusing, but I hope I've answered your question as best as I hope you understand that.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Anna, if you do have further questions, I think it looks like Anna's good, but if you do have further questions, obviously you could email the Police Public Affairs. And Kristen Johansson of KYW, if you, let's see if I can find the list there.
Mike, I'm here.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with the hand raising. But anyway, just a quick question. I may have missed this, but did you say that you were going to have police in front of the pools as well as the rec centers? That's for Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner Nash.
Commissioner Dales?
Yes, we're going to have officers assigned to the pools. Some will be roving beats, checking on pools periodically, and some officers will be stationary. The ones who will be stationary are the areas where we had problems in the past. So that's how we're going to be policing the pools this summer.
Would they be the officers like on bikes or yes. I'm just thinking for kids. Okay.
Yes.
For kids to see that, you know.
Yes, a combination of officers on bikes and also on foot.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you good, Kristen? You're all set?
Yep.
Good, very good. And with that, we will conclude this press briefing. Seeing no further questions, thank you all for joining us. And the next briefing will be 2 weeks from today at 1 p.m. and that is May 12th. Thank you.